But the house itself, it just has a feeling of the macabre and evil. And I think that it's more appropriate to kind of, in my mind, and this is just my personal opinion, to knock it down and put up some kind of nice memorial to the victims where people can go and spend time in that place and remember, who these good people were and the bad thing that happened to them.
Everybody entitled to their opinion, though. Right.
The house will be torn down on December 28th, 2 days before the 1-year mark of Kohberger's arrest.
Innocent until, man, I'm guessing on the last video I spent too much time on the drama between, Harsh Reality and Steve G. That on the back end of that video, it probably didn't really hit that I was talking about the demolition of the house, and maybe I just didn't say much or enough. But let's talk about that now, man. I got some very, very me thoughts about that. You know what I mean? Flash back to that, whatever was going on between those two gentlemen. Someone told me in the comments that I guess, I had seen what Harsh Reality planned a live last night, and I guess it got canceled. So let's just hope he's rethinking that, man. You know what I mean? I don't know what's going on with that situation. I'm not saying anybody doesn't have a right to defend themselves. I'm just going to always reiterate, man, that I think it's appropriate for adults to behave like adults. And to surround yourself with people who are willing to remind you and challenge you when you aren't. You know what I mean? We all need that, me and myself included. So let's get to this thing, man. I'm on the internet like we all are, and on Twitter I see, the young man, I'll go ahead and say his name, Kevin Fixler. I don't know who he's associated with, et cetera, but he's, reposting a statement from Shannon Gray, the G's attorney. Now, I'm not necessarily initial type thing. I know y'all got all kind of words that y'all don't say. Y'all say unalived, and me personally, man, maybe in 5 years or next week I'll see the benefit in doing that. I know the algorithm and YouTube this and YouTube that. I just don't like to play the games, man. I'm gonna say the words, and whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. And like I said, maybe I'll learn why I should have been doing that and need to do that later, but right now I'm just gonna say the words. So I'm saying that to say, and even when it comes to victims, I don't necessarily like the initial thing, because I think it contributes, intentionally or not, to dehumanizing them. I'm a big fan of saying names, of humanizing people, and even in tragedies, especially in tragedies, so we remember who they are and remember the dialogue about them like humans. You know what I mean? I can't say treat because they're not here anymore. And I'm saying that to say, when I say the G's, it's not because now I'm forgetting my own logic. It's because, hell, I can't even never pronounce their name right. Gonzalez, and I don't want to come off as condescending or disrespectful. So the G's attorney, Shannon Gray, releases a statement for them. I guess I want to try to say a few things before I read this, guys. I also listened to Anjanette Levy speaking with an attorney on her channel about the house coming down, Law and Crime, if I remember correctly. And he has experience. He says he just came off a trial. I think he was on the jury where, this was the case. I think he said that. But I know he definitely said, and here I go saying no, and I don't remember to say I know. I'm pretty sure he said he was involved in a case before where the question was whether the residence should be torn down or not. You know what I mean? And I'll go ahead and tell you, this guy, his final position was that, he thinks once the prosecution and the defense team has gotten everything that they need from the residence, he's more of a fan of it being torn down. The biggest thing about all of this, including what he said and the questions that Anjanette Levy had for him, guys, I think some people are just forgetting that we are all expressing our opinions. And the immediate question that occurs to me is, whose opinion has more weight, and then where did the excessive weight of their opinion get its authority from, right? So whose opinion should matter more and why? The immediate answer a lot of people are going to give is the families. I'm going to be provocative here and ask why. Number one, we only have two families, right? I never seen Zaina's family saying they don't want the house tore down. But let's give whoever's saying that the benefit of the doubt, because it's being reported in the media. We know how the G's feel about it. They definitely don't want the house torn down. There are two other families involved. We don't even know how they feel. Do they agree with the G's? I've said this in my video before. I'm just going to say the G's because I haven't seen Zaina's family saying that, while I would give that notion the benefit of the doubt. But do we even know how the other two families feel about it? And the question that I asked previously was, what if they disagree with the G's? Because right now, the pro-leave the residence up crowd is saying, you know, a lot of their mantra, and shout out to my homie, Evil CJ. He's definitely on the leave that I watched his live last night. Big dog, I tell you, I've been in your lives all the time. I just don't say anything because I have strong opinions, and I don't like how that recipe, not with you alone, but just when I mix it with other people, I prefer to express my opinions, you know, on my platform. You know what I mean? So therefore, if people see it, it's because they're coming, not because I'm going into their spaces. And then that could go left. But anyway, I watched his live last night, and he's definitely an advocate. He was very sad that the house is being torn down because he's an advocate for it staying up. You know what I mean? So shout out to a couple of other people. I'm not going to get to calling a bunch of names. I know you are proponents of this house staying up. But I would just ask the crowd who says, and I'm not saying that CJ and anybody else I didn't mention falls into this category, but if you do fall into this category, if you get to a place where the other families disagree and they want the house torn down, because some of y'all are saying that the onus for your opinion is that the families want the house to stay up. So if you find out that the other two families, or even just one of the other families, want the house to come down, then what do? You're going to go to a majority vote? Like, how does it play out then for the crowd? And I'm not saying this in a condescending way, but for the crowd that believes the family's opinion should have the onus here. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I'm torn about whether the house should come down or not. I waver from one day to the next about, you know, my opinion on the matter. I have definite questions about the timing. I said this in my last video. A lot of questions, you know, come up, and most of them probably have reasonable answers. I will say that, or may have reasonable answers. But the fumbling of this case, or the seeming fumbling of this case by all authorities involved, it doesn't lend to credibility on any future decisions. You know what I mean? It's just like, damn, you can make the decision that we want you to make, and we're still going to question you because of how things have been handled in the past on this case, as far as certain suspects being let off, certain investigative, you know, avenues not being pursued, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? But once again, I'm going to read, you know, this statement. And before I do, I want to remind everybody, because it seems like it's getting lost in the chatter. We're all just offering opinions here. And for me, the main question is, whose opinion should be priority? Statement on behalf of the Goncalves family. Let us ask this. This is Steve Shannon Gray, issuing. So I'm going to suppose that him or someone on his team wrote this statement for the G family. Let us ask, isn't it better to have the King Road house and not need it than to need it and not have it? That has been our question to the prosecution and the University of Idaho for the entire time the demo of the King Road, I guess he meant King Road house, has been an issue. But why is it even up for discussion? Great question, sir. This is one of the most horrific crimes in the history of Idaho, and the University of Idaho wants to destroy one of the most critical pieces of evidence in the case. And it is also important to make note that there is now a demolition date before there is even a trial date set. That alone speaks volumes. It is obvious from the two recent visits to the house by both the prosecution and the defense that there is still evidentiary value in having the King Road house still standing. There may be an additional discovery by either party that prompts one side or the other to go back to the scene of the crime. There has always been a dialogue about the 3D imaging, or they are building a model to replicate the home, etc. First and foremost, what a waste of state money and resources. And secondly, nothing replaces the real thing. I can't really disagree with you there, sir. Jurors are about the nothing replacing the real thing part. Jurors are notoriously unpredictable, and they tend to make decisions on a variety of facts and circumstances. It would be foolish of us to try and foresee what they will want or need to make a just verdict in this case. Can't necessarily disagree with you there, even though sometimes tough decisions do need to be made. The family has stressed tirelessly to the prosecution and the University of Idaho the importance, evidentiary and emotionally, emotionally, that the King Road house carries, but nobody seems to care enough. It's like screaming into a void. Nobody is listening, and everybody tells you how sorry they are for the decision, but the family's opinion isn't a priority. Victims' families have a voice, and it should be heard and listened to. I want to read that last paragraph again Because the fact that I write a lot, guys. I create content. I've always been like a thought piece, you know what I mean, writer type person. So I know, without being like one of the professionals, the one people who do this on a daily basis, I know like you want to wrap up very well. Like you want to try to communicate your final point or everything about what you were trying to say. You want to get that and you want to drive it home in your final few sentences, paragraph, or whatever. And with that in mind, I just want to reread that last paragraph. The family has stressed tirelessly to the prosecution and the University of Idaho the importance, evidentiary and emotionally, that the King Road house carries, but nobody seems to care enough. It's like screaming into a void. Nobody is listening, and everybody tells you how sorry they are for the decision, but the family's opinion isn't a priority. Victims' families have a voice and should be heard and listened to. The audacity, guys, the audacity of the world that we live in, and not the world. I want to be clear here and specific here. The people in the world, audacity, human audacity always just blows me away, literally like a time bomb, like a nuclear explosion. I'm telling you, human audacity. Number one, should we, morally speaking, listen to humans express their grief, their feelings, their emotions, etc., etc.? Yes, we should. Is anybody obligated to listen to anybody else express anything? No, we're not. So I have to agree, guys. There's a double-edged sword here. I have to agree with Shannon's thoughts, Mr. Gray's thoughts concerning the family and their opinions and their feelings and their need to not only express them but be heard in expressing them. I have to agree that yes, morally, yes, I'm a Christian. The Bible instructs us we should be concerned for others even more so than ourselves. But the Bible itself never says that we are obligated. Now, will there be a response to us being inconsiderate toward other humans? Yes, there will. Karma, I call him Jesus Christ, the author and the finisher. There is a response to that, and that will be dictated by our God. Some people say karma, whatever you want to say. I say our God. It will be dictated. Your inconsiderateness to other human beings, there will be a response to that dictated by God himself. But God himself doesn't obligate. And that's where the fine balance comes in. Not only for the victims' families, but for us who have opinions, guys. Our opinion doesn't obligate anybody to do a damn thing. And as adults, we get so emotional that we forget that, and it puzzles me. I don't know. Maybe because I come from a different lifestyle, a different walk of life. I've realized from early on that nobody is obligated to give a damn how I feel about anything. It would be nice. It would be the godly thing to do, the morally correct thing to do. But obviously, since a lot of people don't do it, nobody's obligated to. And there are times when I don't give as much attention and concern to how people feel as I should and as they deserve. So when you make statements like that, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just wondering if you are forgetting the balance that needs to be attached to that statement, because balance matters more than anything. Because when you lose balance, you start to feel privilege, and privilege causes a lot of problems when it's misplaced and misused. I've always said there's nothing wrong with privilege. It's what we do with it that matters. So once you start saying, because I am a victim, I'm a part of the victim's family, everything that I think and feel should be the priority, that's where me and you were going to clash and we're going to have a problem. Because unfortunately, because your loved one was the actual victim here, and by that you are victimized, it doesn't give your feelings a priority over anybody that's affected by this case. Now, I want to be clear, that's my opinion. I could argue it. And by argue, I don't mean confrontational conversation. I mean set forth. You being a victim based on the fact that your family was victimized, that there are other things to consider besides your feelings as a victim's family. And I don't say that with inconsiderate in mind. I don't say that to be callous or rude or inconsiderate. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just speaking reality here. Life does go on. I've lost people I love. Most of us have. Most of us will. You will find that the world doesn't stop. And as someone who has lost very, very close people I love, priority people I love, I don't expect everyone whose world to stop when it happens. Because as much as I grieve with people who grieve and mourn with people who mourn, my world doesn't completely stop when I see people lose people. Just this week, I've shared stories. A young lady stabbed another 17-year-old mother to death. One man shot his ex-girlfriend and her mother to death right here in Florida. The other case didn't happen in Florida. Another man, I think this was in Florida, he went in a house and shot, I think his wife and maybe somebody else to death. That's just like Two stories are the stories that I heard. I've been watching the trial where the young lady, she pursued a man in a traffic accident and ended up going and killing him for whatever reason was going through her mind, and they just gave her life and so many other years and stuff. Tragedy is abounding around us, guys. It always has. It always will. To expect the world to stop based on how our emotional response is driving us in any situation, once again, I would say, it's just audacious ignorance. And I know that sounds a little harsh, but it's very true. It's audacious ignorance to expect the world to stop on a dime and begin to spin based on how we feel emotionally because we've experienced tragedy, guys. No, life goes on. People should be considerate. People should be kind. So when we talk about this case and shit, the house being torn down, these are some of the things that I hit on in the other video. I personally want to reiterate, I'm back and forth. But I listened to that man and he made some good points. He would say, hey man, at this point, I guarantee you the state and the defense, they months ago, they were okay. They signed off on the house being torn down. Now, why are you back in there? Obviously, that's going to be one of the first questions. If you were okay with it being torn down then, but you're going back in there now, then obviously we're going to be looking at you sideways a little bit. Because if you knew there was any chance that you would want to go back in there, you should have never signed off. If there was any chance that you would want to or need to go back in there, it's going to be a hard sell that we agree you should have signed off on the house being torn down months ago. There was no rush. Nobody was pressuring you besides maybe the school. You could have fought back against that if you had any inclination. And obviously you have an inclination because you're there now. People would say, well, because it's up, they said, let me take advantage of it. Once again, if there was even a slight possibility that you would want to go back in there, it's going to be a hard sell that it was okay for you to sign off on it being demolished. But I got to kind of agree with the guy. If they're saying that they were okay, then they probably got everything they think they need out of it. Now, I want to say this too. Just because these air quotes professional litigation people say they're good, I mean, we have an overwhelming amount of examples how these professionals don't know what the hell they're doing. Like they drop the ball all the time. And I'm not even trying to speak condescendingly or disrespectful about them. They're human. Sometimes they do it just because their human error kicks in. Sometimes they do it because they have ulterior motives, devious motives. But them being professional and checking a box doesn't mean that the box needed to be checked. That's the point I'm making here. But we have to weigh it at least, right? We should weigh it, right? The professionals are saying, hey, man, you could tear the house down. When you think also that there are other, I've touched on this in the last video, I'm going to be redundant here. The university, as many questions as even I myself have about them, they are still providing great opportunities for our young people, our young adults to navigate their way into life, adulthood, families, and et cetera, et cetera. This university, like many, and they're producing some problems too. We're not going to skip over that. But they're also providing opportunities. Like I said, I seen where one football player said he's now entering the draft portal. If he becomes a professional NFL player, at least financially, he's probably going to be set for life, which will provide for him the opportunity to set generations of his family for life as long as he handles it well. Now, obviously, we don't know how that's going to play out. But when I say that this university is providing positive opportunities for our young adults, I just wanted to make a reference to one that I didn't look for that. It just happened to be on the Twitter feed. Do we just keep all of that on pause because this one, and when I say this one, it sounds way more horrid and cruel and insensitive than I ever intend for it to do. But this incident happened, man. Human tragedy, and I'm talking about horrific human tragedy, has been in our DNA since human existence, since our birth. At what point do we stop life or not let life go on because human tragedy occurs? Now, another point the guy made is that if they have security guards out there right now, at what will it one day turn that this house will be like a tourist attraction? It's not a far reach at all. You know what I mean? Like people are coming by. People already do it. There are creators that have gone by there. I'm not saying they did anything wrong. I'm just saying like it's already attracting people. So once they just free it up and there's no more security guard and no more gates and no more perimeters, will it just turn into a full-fledged tourist attraction? And then what will that do to that university in that town and et cetera, et cetera? I'm just trying to drive home the point, guys, that life has to go on emotionally, as it pertains to business and all areas that you can think of. And at what point does someone saying, hey, I don't think life should go on right now in this regard, and then you have other people saying, I'm involved in this situation, it affects me too, I do think life should go on in this regard. And whose opinion holds priority there? And if you're going to say it's the victim's opinions just based on emotions, guys, I submit to you that's what gets us in trouble a lot of times. We make decisions based on nothing but emotion alone. We don't think about logic. We don't think about the other people involved. We don't think about rationale. We don't think about all of the other implications that absolutely need to be considered. The only damn thing we think about is how we feel or how the people that agree with us or that we agree with feel. That cannot and should not ever be the deciding factor in any damn thing. So when Shannon Gray, I respect what he had to say about the families. I'm pretty sure in his heart it's coming from a pure place. But when you set forth that the victim's family's opinion should be heard and they should matter, I don't think anybody, that's one reason. I'm not defending the university here or anybody involved, but that is one reason. The conversation is there. You literally have people right now on both sides of the fence. Tear the house down, don't tear the house down. From the the social media spaces all the way up to the authorities actually involved in decision making here. There's the conversation. So to act like the family's voices aren't being listened to and heard, sir, that's not what you really are saying here. You're saying what you did say, that their voices should be given a priority. Sir, I agree with you there. I just don't agree with you that they should be given top priority, guys. I don't agree with anybody who thinks that because these are victims' families, that their voices, opinions, and emotions should be given top priority when the decision made here will literally affect the lives of many other people. Nobody's better than nobody. Rest in peace to our 4 victims: Ethan, Kaylee, Maddie, Zayna. I'm praying for their families all the time. My heart breaks through tragedy. I pray for people all of the time just because I'm grieved to know that they would be hurting, because I know how it feels like to lose a loved one just to natural causes, much less, horrific circumstances. I grieve for you. I pray for you. When I was in that situation, I didn't only say it, I lived out. My emotions aren't the primary concern here. This is affect everybody involved and affected needs to be considered. And that's how we make a decision. How will this turn into the best outcome for everybody involved? And so in this situation, when I say everybody, I'm talking about the victims' families. I'm talking about the university as a whole, down to the individual students who go to that university, the university's future, the kids who actually live next door, us as we hear about this case. Well, maybe not so much us. I went a little too far then. But you get my point. We can't just say the dime stops on how 2 of the victims' family feel, because we have to reiterate that we haven't even heard how 2. If we have, and I'm wrong for saying that, guys, correct me and source me. Correct me and source me. Y'all know I'm a facts person over here. I don't do no damn opinions and emotions like that. That's not where it stops. But we can't just say the dime needs to stop on how 2 families feel about it, while only one of them is being outspoken about it. And we don't even know how the other 2 families feel. If we're just all agreeing that we're going to base it on how the families feel, don't we need to know how the other families feel as well? And I'm still saying that should never be the deciding factor, because emotions cause a lot of trouble, guys. What do you think? What do you think? And I'm going to challenge you here. I'm not saying set your emotions aside, but I am challenging you to add logic and reason to your emotions. There's reasons to keep the house up. He used these words literally in his statement: evidentiary and emotional, right? When you consider those 2 factors and everything else that needs to be considered, meaning you're not just stopping with how the victims' families feel, but you're also considering how this will play out and affect everyone involved, that shit has a right to be considered, because it is my opinion now. I'm telling you, this is my opinion. Nobody's better than nobody, therefore everyone should be considered. When you stop and consider all of that, what do you think? Should the house be torn down based on what you know, or should the house remain up until after trial? And not only that being the question, why is your answer your answer? If you say yes, the house should remain until trial is over with, why do you feel like that? If you say no, the house should come down right now, why do you feel like that? And let me just be fair, because I said I haven't made up my mind and I'm back and forth about it. Let me be fair and answer that question myself. I'm going to be honest, guys. With all things considered, with all things considered, I think the house should come down. And I'm gonna tell you why I feel like that, because that's what I asked y'all. I asked y'all, how y'all feel and why you feel like that. Some people don't mind being reminded of grief. They revisit the grief because that's part of, you know what I mean, what keeps them going. I touched on this when I was talking about the 1 year anniversary and the different parents and how they were, you know, responding in videos. Some parents choose to, you know, live in that grief and revisit it, and some people choose to move on. You know what I mean? I think the people that are saying the house should remain up are not even considering the people who are torn apart by grief and torn apart by reminders of grief, right? So, and I'm touching on the emotional aspect of it right now. And so if we consider both sides, the people that revisit the grief and that's how they go on, that's how they navigate forward, and then we consider the people that are torn apart by grief and reminders of it, then you begin to say, okay, well, now I have to think about whose path forward should take priority. And the answer to that question is, I don't know. You know what I mean? But I do know this. If you continue to allow the house to remain there simply because you have one side saying, for us, the emotional aspect of it is a priority, then you yourself answer the question that the other side doesn't matter as much and they're less of a priority. And I can't say that. And over here on this one side where you have the people who they want to go on, whether they're torn apart by the grief or whether it's a business decision or whatever, I'm going to be honest with you, they seem to be the majority of people. I don't hear as many voices saying, of the people involved, not our opinions, but the people actually involved in the situation, from the victim families to the people the authorities who make the decision. I don't hear as many people saying, let the house remain. And not only that, guys, I don't hear as the reasons for the house remaining for the people that want it to remain. The involved people, I got to keep stressing that, don't supersede or make more sense to me than the people that are saying, let's tear the house down. You know what I mean? And that's the emotional aspect of it. The evidentiary aspect of why I say I'm agreeing that the house should be torn down is they've been in there like a whole bunch of times. I myself can't imagine that there's much more evidence there, but obviously if you leave the house up for 100 years, I'm pretty sure somebody 100 years from now go there and find a clue connected to this case. But they've been there several times, man. They've damn near gotten everything that they probably need. At least they feel like that. And on top of that, there's a debate about whether, the jury is going to see it or walk through it at all. So since we don't, that's one part of the argument, where the jury should be able to walk through it. Even if the house remains, we don't know that that's going to happen. So now I'm just touching on the evidentiary aspect of it, because they've been there several times, the prosecution and the defense. And we don't even know if the jury will be able to walk through it if it remains. The evidentiary aspect of it still leans right now for me that the house should be torn down. You know what I mean? Now, to be fair, I might come back tomorrow and have a totally different opinion about it, because I don't know, guys. But at the end of the day, what I do know, and I wanted to remind y'all and challenge you to consider, that emotions don't trump everything. And even if they do, you have to ask yourself, whose emotions should be priority? And when you make that decision, you have to ask yourself, where did the authority in that decision come from? I don't think anybody's better than anybody, therefore nobody's emotions should trump anybody's emotions. Everything and everyone needs to be considered. Tell me how you feel, man. Y'all know me. Feel free to disagree. Innocent until. Be safe.
So I don't think the house itself needs to be there as a reminder of the evil. I think it's better probably to have some kind of memorial, and hopefully the university will consider doing that. I don't know if they've mentioned that at all, but I would think that would be much more appropriate. But
It's been more than a year since Maddie Mogan, Kelly Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were murdered at the house on King Road. Police held the scene for weeks, often going back to the house to look at things or collect more evidence. Following the arrest of Brian Kohberger for their murders, the owners of the King Road house gave the property to the university, which is totally understandable. A horrific crime occurred there. Asbestos and other biohazards were discovered inside. Who would want to live there? The school wants to tear down the house, but Kaylee Gonsalves' family specifically wanted the house to stay around until after the trial. I broke the story of the family wanting the house to remain standing last June. Here's the Gonsalves family attorney, Shannon Gray.
A big piece of evidence that potentially a jury might want to see it. I mean, there's sights and sounds and viewpoints and angles. It's an odd shaped house. where witnesses were standing, where potentially the defendant was standing, locations, how you could hear something, how you couldn't hear it, if there was video or any other evidence outside, what was the vantage point of those videos, if they picked up audio or anything. So a lot of things I think are important about that home, and we've just stressed, just hold on. Wait till the trial is over, and then do whatever you want with the property.
Now, after the outcry from the Gonsalves and Kernodle families, the university then changed course and halted plans for a possible October demolition. Then, soon after Koberger, who maintains his innocence, waived his right to a speedy trial, prosecutors and the FBI actually went back to the house on King Road. At the time, the university said they were there to take measurements for audio and other trial exhibits that would be constructed. That wouldn't have been possible before with the tight time frame of a speedy trial. Now the university has announced that Koberger's defense team was also being given access to the house so they could do their own work there, including taking measurements and getting some drone footage. The house will be torn down on December 28th, 2 days before the 1-year mark of Koberger's arrest. The president of the university issued the following statement. It is the grim reminder of the heinous act that took place there. While we appreciate the emotional connection some family members of the victims may have to this house, it is time for its removal and to allow the collective healing of our community to continue.
So what do you think? It's your tragedy.